Hi. I still remember how the lights shimmered across the crystal glasses, how the smell of rosemary and roasted ham hung in the air like a memory you don't know is about to become tainted. We were at her parents' place. Long oak table, centerpiece of pine cones and red candles, the kind of picture-perfect scene you'd find on a Hallmark card. 15 people gathered. Her family, my family, siblings, cousins, friends. All smiles. All pretending this wasn't a performance. I'd been rehearsing my lines for weeks. She wore that green velvet dress I always liked. The one with the low back and tiny gold buttons running down her spine. Her hair was curled just the way I used to love it. And her laugh, it rang out bright, too bright. Like she was overcompensating for something. I noticed the first text about 20 minutes into dinner. Her phone buzzed softly on the bench beside her. She didn't flinch, just glanced down, smiled subtly, and took another bite of stuffing. I watched her out of the corner of my eye as I passed the gravy. Buzz, buzz. Each vibration was like a flicker in my chest. A silent, rhythmic warning. She angled the phone, subtle, like someone trying to hide a winning hand. Thumb danced over the screen. Not once did she look my way. Not once did she reach for my knee under the table or lean into me when the room got loud. We hadn't touched in days. Weeks, really. The kind of absence that isn't declared, it just settles in. Like dust on a bookshelf. Quiet, consistent, heavy if you let it be. I caught her smirking after another buzz, biting her lip in that way she used to do when we first started dating. Only back then, she was looking at me. You good? I whispered, leaning in as everyone else raised their glasses to toast something her father had just said. She nodded quickly, lips tight. Yeah, just work stuff. One of the interns messed up a client file. At Christmas dinner. She'd never lied well. Not to me, anyway. But she had gotten better. Or maybe I'd just gotten tired of squinting at the signs. Later, as the wine flowed and stories were told, old family anecdotes, new baby announcements, half-drunken jokes about politics, I watched her more closely. I watched the way her hand curled protectively around the phone. The way her face lit up just for a second before dimming again. The little gasps of breath she stifled every time it vibrated. That's when I knew. I'd had suspicions, sure. There'd been distance. A growing, aching silence in our home. Her laugh was becoming rarer, her smile more rehearsed. Late nights at the office. Client emergencies. Girls' nights, she didn't want me to join. Password changes. Phone flipped screen down. All the textbook signs I used to think happened to other people. But that dinner, our last Christmas dinner as husband and wife, though no one knew it yet, was different. It was proof. I didn't have the full picture then, just pieces. But the way she looked down, the way she giggled silently at one of the messages like she forgot I was beside her, told me enough. She wasn't texting a coworker. She wasn't fixing a file. She was with him. In her mind. Maybe in her heart. Maybe more. And I sat there, carving into the ham she'd basted the night before, pretending I didn't feel every slice like it was being done to me. You okay? Her sister asked at one point, her brow slightly furrowed, voice barely above the crackle of the fireplace. I smiled and nodded. Just thinking. She let it go. But something had snapped inside me. Not in a rage kind of way. More like a cord that had held me together had finally frayed down to nothing. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just a cold kind of clarity. I started to really look around the room. Her dad, gruff but good-hearted, was bragging about his woodwork project. Her mom kept doting on the grandkids. Her brother was going on about his new Tesla, and the cousins were giggling over a TikTok video someone had shared. All of them oblivious. All of them sipping from wine glasses, laughing beneath golden lights, unaware they were sitting atop a sinking ship. It made me wonder how long she'd been doing this. Weeks? Months? Did she think I didn't notice? Or did she just not care anymore? Buzz. This time, I didn't pretend not to hear it. I turned my head, watched her smile, watched her thumbs move, watched the glow of the screen light up her cheekbone. Everything okay? I asked again, louder this time. She jumped slightly. Huh? Yeah. Just yeah. I held her gaze a beat longer than I should have. She blinked, looked away, said nothing. I knew then that whatever love we once had turned into something else. Not hate. Not yet. But something colder. Something quieter. A resignation. Like we were both standing in a room that had already burned down, pretending we could still warm ourselves by the memory of a fire. And in that moment, I made a decision. I picked up my wine glass. Waited until the room had quieted, just a beat of silence after a burst of laughter from her uncle, one of those natural dips in conversation. Then I stood. Forks paused. Eyes turned. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure what was happening. I lifted the glass. To my wife? I began, smiling. She smiled back, hesitantly. Oh. I cut her off. To my wife's boyfriend, I said. And that's when the world stopped moving. There's a silence that doesn't just fall. It crashes. That was the sound in the room after I said it. Forks frozen in midair, mouths slightly open. The candle flames almost seemed to flicker with shock. Her sister dropped her napkin. Her father stared like he didn't quite understand the words. But she blinked. Once. Twice. Then came the flush in her cheeks, red, rising like guilt boiling over. I didn't sit down. I didn't elaborate. I just held my glass midair, waiting to see if she would say something. Admit it. Deny it. Apologize. Laugh it off. Anything. But she just sat there. A beat passed, then another, and finally someone laughed. Nervous. Awkward. One of the cousins maybe. Trying to smooth it over like I'd made a joke in poor taste. She tried to grab onto that lifeline. Oh my God, babe, she said, smiling too wide, her voice falsely light. Seriously? That's not funny. I tilted my head. But it's true, right? Now it was her turn to freeze. That was the moment. The exact second where everyone knew I wasn't kidding. That this wasn't some offhand toast or awkward holiday humor. I was laying a card down on the table, face up, daring her to pretend it wasn't hers. Her mother gasped. Her dad muttered something, his voice low, confused, concerned, but no one else spoke. It was like they were afraid any sound might crack the room entirely open. Her fingers hovered near her phone, still face up beside her plate. She didn't reach for it. She just stared at me, and then the mask started to slip. I saw it, the panic that flickered behind her eyes. That quiet calculation. How long? I asked. It wasn't a shout, just a question. Honest. Direct. My voice felt steadier than it should have. She didn't answer. How long, Jenna? I didn't know if it was out of shock or shame or defiance, but she didn't respond. Not with words. Just that silence again. And this time it was louder than anything. I lowered my glass, set it on the table. Didn't drink. Didn't touch my food again. I found the texts. Last week. I let my eyes drift around the table, speaking to everyone now. The ones you sent under the table. Tonight. And the ones from the hotel room last month. The ones that started around Halloween, maybe earlier. I don't know. I didn't check back that far. Didn't want to see more than I already had. Someone at the far end of the table cursed under their breath. Her sister muttered, Jesus, Jenna. Still, she said nothing. Her shoulders were rigid, jaw clenched, eyes glassy like she was deciding between fight or flight. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, I admitted, now talking more to myself than anyone. I thought maybe I'd wait until after the holidays. Let everyone have one more perfect Christmas. But then you couldn't help yourself. I pointed, gently, to the phone by her plate. You had to text him during dinner. With me right next to you. In front of my mother. In front of your father. You didn't even look guilty. Her voice, when it finally came, was thin and sharp, like a wire stretched too tight. You're making a scene. I let out a small breath. No, Jenna. You made the scene. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. I looked down at my plate, half-eaten, growing cold. Then I looked around the room. Her brother was staring into his wine like it held answers. Her father looked angry, but it wasn't aimed at me. Her mother had one trembling hand at her throat, eyes wide and wet. My own family sat stiffly. My mom near tears, my sister clutching her husband's hand like something had broken that couldn't be fixed. And maybe it had. I stood straight, took my napkin and folded it gently, placing it beside my plate. There was no yelling. No dramatic chair push. Just the quiet, deliberate movement of a man who'd finally had enough. I'm sorry, I said, not to her, but to the room. I didn't come here to ruin anyone's Christmas. But I also didn't come here to play the fool. Not anymore. I turned to leave. Wait, she said. Just one word. Soft, almost a whisper. I paused. Not because I hoped, but because some part of me needed to hear it. You don't understand, she said. I looked back over my shoulder. Then help me. Her mouth opened, then closed. And that was it. That was all she had. I nodded once. That's when her father stood. Loud. Abrupt. He knocked over his wine. Red soaked into the white linen like a wound. You did this, he barked at her. After everything, Jenna? She tried to say something, but he waved it off, sat back down like the weight of it all had just buckled him. And I walked out. I didn't take my coat, didn't grab my bag. I just walked. Into the snow, into the night. And for the first time in months, I felt warm. It snowed that night. The kind of snow that hushes everything, muffles your footsteps, your heartbeat, your anger. I walked through it like I was walking out of a dream, slow, steady, one breath at a time. Each step crunching down into the silence I had earned. I didn't go far. Ended up in a diner off Main, the kind of place that stayed open on holidays for people like me, the forgotten, the running, the suddenly alone. I ordered a coffee, sat in a booth by the window, and watched the snow gather on the cars and street lamps. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe 3. Long enough for the rage to dull and the grief to settle into my bones. She didn't text, didn't call. Part of me wished she would. Most of me knew she wouldn't. Cowards rarely run toward the fire they lit. By the time I got home that night, our home, still technically, I found the lights on in the hallway. One suitcase was missing. Her coat was gone. The bedroom door stood open and cold, our bed still made. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Not an apology. Not really. Just a few sentences scribbled in that cursive she practiced in middle school. She said she didn't mean for things to happen this way. Said she was confused, ashamed, and needed space. Not once did she say sorry. Not once did she write my name. I read it twice. Folded it once. Dropped it into the trash under the sink. The next few days blurred together. My family didn't call right away. I think they were giving me space. Or maybe they were grieving too. I'd ripped the bow off Christmas. But I also think they understood why. What I didn't expect were the messages. From her sister, first. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Then her brother. She's been different lately. Cold. I wish I had seen it. Even her father reached out. A voicemail, rough-voiced and raw. If there's anything you need, son, I'm here. But Jenna? Nothing. Radio silence. Until New Year's Day. One text. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. I'd imagined this moment. Played it out in so many ways. Me yelling. Her crying. Me cold. Her begging. But when it came, I felt nothing. Still, I said yes. Not out of hope, but because I needed closure. We met at the park, the one we used to walk through in the early days when we still held hands without thinking. She was wearing that same green coat from last winter, the one I bought her with the silver buttons she used to love. She looked tired. Paler. Smaller, somehow. I don't know how to explain what I did, she began. I didn't interrupt. Just let her talk. She told me he was someone from work. A new hire. Said it started as harmless flirting. Grew into something more when she felt I was emotionally distant. When she felt unseen. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I'd heard those words before. From books, movies, therapists. None of it felt real anymore. Just recycled excuses for choices that hurt people. I didn't mean to fall for him, she said. I looked at her then. But you did. She didn't answer. And there it was. The last crack in the foundation. The final little tremor before the whole thing came down. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I just nodded. Because the truth was simple. I didn't want her back. I'm filing next week, I told her. I've already spoken to a lawyer. She swallowed hard. Is there any chance? No, I said. Not cruel. Just final. She blinked fast, her breath visible in the cold air. I could see the moment it hit her, the loss. Not just of me, but of everything I had given her. My loyalty, my presence, my blind belief that we were forever. I stood. She stayed seated. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for, I said. But I'm done being your collateral damage. And I walked away. It's been 11 months now. I live in a smaller place. Closer to the city. Quiet. Clean. I cook more. Sleep better. I joined a gym, read more books, started seeing a therapist who doesn't ask about her unless I want to talk. Sometimes, around the holidays, I still feel that sting. That flicker of memory. The lights, the laughter, the way her eyes used to meet mine before they started drifting elsewhere. But mostly, I feel something better. Freedom. Not the kind you fight for. The kind you choose. And every time someone raises a glass and toasts to love or to marriage, I don't flinch anymore. I just lift mine and say softly, honestly, to truth. Bye-bye.